There is a specific moment, not a decade, not a vague sense that things are finally clicking. A specific, identifiable crossover point where compounding stops being something your financial advisor mentions in the first meeting and starts being something that changes the actual texture of your life. Here's the strange part. Most people who have already crossed this moment don't know they have. They're still looking at the number on the screen, still telling themselves they're not quite there yet, still saving defensively while the machine has been running for years. The moment already happened. They just didn't know what it looked like from the inside. 7 things, 7 moments, thresholds, and decisions that either move you toward that crossover or quietly delay it by a decade you don't get back. Some of these will be genuinely satisfying. A couple might sting specifically if you've ever cashed out a retirement account when you changed jobs because the number looked good, or sold everything in a bad market month because you couldn't keep watching the balance fall. Stick around for number 1 because that's the one I kept for last. That's where I actually show you what the exact moment looks like, and the single question that tells you whether you've already crossed it without realizing it. Let's go. Number 7. The $100,000 threshold. Every personal finance account on the internet has made a version of this video, including, I'll acknowledge right up front this one. But most of them stop at the psychology crossing, 6 figures. Feels good. It builds momentum. Keep going. That's true. It's also not the real reason the number matters. Here's the actual reason. At 10% annual growth, the long-run historical average for a broad market index, give or take, depending on the decade, $100,000 generates $10,000 per year without you doing anything at all. That's $833 a month. Free. From money that already exists. Before $100,000 compounding is working, but it's patient, quiet work. A $20,000 portfolio at 10% makes $2,000 a year. A $50,000 portfolio makes $5,000. Genuinely useful, not yet something you can feel in the room. At $100,000, the math crosses into something different. Your money has started having opinions about your future without requiring your constant input. The annual return is now a real number, $10,000, not a rounding error at the bottom of a statement. That's not a milestone to celebrate and move past. That's a gear change. The moment the engine first turns over and stays on. And most people drive straight through it without noticing because nobody told them to look for it. Once the engine's running, here's the first thing that changes. Number 6. The year your portfolio earns more in returns than you actually contribute to it in new money. Let me make this concrete. If you're adding $15,000 a year to your retirement accounts, solid, responsible, the kind of number that actually moves things, then the year your portfolio generates more than $15,000 in returns is the year something structural shifts. At a 7% average annual return, that crossover happens when your balance reaches approximately $214,000. At that point, your portfolio is contributing more to your retirement than you are. Your money never files for FMLA, never sends a message at 4:45 on a Friday saying it needs to step away for a personal matter, never shows up 30 minutes late and blames traffic. At $214,000, your portfolio is the most consistent contributor in the room. How does that feel? Your own contributions still matter enormously. They build the base, and the base is what drives the returns. But you are no longer the only worker on this project. There is now a second contributor on the payroll. It doesn't have a desk. It doesn't have a benefits package. It has been quietly outworking you since the day the balance cleared $214,000. Most people have no idea when this happened to them. They look at the balance, see it's going up, feel good, and move on. Naming this moment changes how you treat every dollar after it. Because once you know there's a second worker, and you know it's not slowing down, you start protecting it differently. But that second worker is fragile in exactly 1 decade. Here's the decade most people get wrong. Number 5. The decade nobody puts in the brochure. Your 40s look from the outside like carpooling and refinancing and eating leftovers 3 nights a week while quietly investigating what's happening to your knees. Financially, they are jet fuel. If you started saving in your late 20s or early 30s, your 40s are the most productive compounding decade of your life. Not the most dramatic, not the one with the best stories, the most productive because money you invested at 30 has been growing for a full decade, the base is large enough to generate real annual returns, and compounding is now running at full speed on a meaningful base for the first time. The math on this is a little uncomfortable if you're in your 50s. $300,000 at age 40, at 8% average annual growth, becomes approximately $647,000 by age 50, without you adding a single dollar, while you were doing other things. It more than doubled while you were carpooling. The problem is that the 40s are also the most expensive decade. Kids in school mortgage at full-weight cars, finally admitting their age parents occasionally needing things. And so the 40s are when people are most tempted to slow down, pause, or quietly reduce their contributions, which is exactly the wrong response to exactly the right decade. I knew someone who paused contributions for 3 years in her mid-40s. Legitimate reasons: 2 kids in middle school, a refinance, a furnace that chose October to stop working. The pause felt responsible. 3 years, $14,000 a year. When you run what that $42,000 would have compounded to by her retirement, the number is approximately $168,000. She called it 2 hard years and a furnace. The machine called it $168,000. The machine runs fastest in your 40s. That's not the decade to turn down the fuel because the timing feels inconvenient. The reward for protecting that decade is a very specific kind of calm. Here's what that calm looks like. Number 4. There's a behavioral signal that tells you more about where you stand in the compounding machine than any account balance can. It's the market drop you don't do anything about. You've seen how this plays out. The news gets dramatic. Headlines say, "Markets in free fall," and "Investors in full panic," something financial media invented specifically to make Tuesdays feel like they're unfolding in a Ken Burns documentary. Reddit fills up with screenshots of losses. Comment sections overflow with people announcing they're moving everything to cash until things settle down. And then somewhere in that same news cycle, there are people who check the balance, see it's down, and feel approximately nothing. Maybe mild irritation. Maybe they close the app and go make a sandwich. That non-reaction is a signal. Not that they don't understand what's happening, they understand perfectly. It's that their base is large enough, and they've held long enough that they've internalized something. Most investors only understand, in theory, markets go down, markets come back, and a portfolio generating meaningful returns doesn't need to be rescued from a bad quarter. I knew a retired dentist drove a 2014 Ford Fusion with a cracked dashboard he'd been meaning to fix for 3 years, ate lunch at the same diner 4 days a week, didn't own a single item with a visible logo. Net worth around $2.3 million. I asked him once what he did during the 2008 crash. He looked at me for a moment and said, "I don't remember doing anything." He checked the balance, saw it was down, kept his contributions running. Same as every other month. "The money didn't need my input," he said. "It needed time." Meanwhile, an accountant I knew detail-oriented ran the numbers on everything sold. His entire IRA in March of 2009, right at the market bottom, because he said he couldn't watch the balance anymore. The account was at around $192,000 when he sold. He bought back in 6 months later, at a higher price, understandable, something a lot of people did. Had he just held that $192,000 would have grown to approximately $1,100,000 by 2024. He missed the single most powerful compounding window in recent market history because a number on a screen was painful to look at for one bad month. Tell me again who was actually winning. Now the two decisions that pull people away from that kind of patience before they ever develop it. Number 3, and this is the stomach drop one. I need a moment of quiet here because some of you are going to recognize yourselves. When people leave a job, there's often money sitting in a retirement account attached to a company they no longer think about. $40,000, $53,000, sometimes more. And the thought that comes almost every time is, that's mine. And it is. And a lot of people take it. Here's what actually happens when the withdrawal goes through. You get a check. The government gets 2 checks, one for the 10% early withdrawal penalty, which is the IRS's way of saying, we'd prefer you not do this, but since you insist, we'd like a cut, and one for income taxes on the full amount at your regular rate. On $50,000, that's roughly $16,000 gone before you see a dollar. You take home about $34,000. That $34,000 feels like money. And it was. It was also $503,000 wearing a very convincing costume. Because $50,000 at age 35 left untouched at 8% average annual growth becomes approximately $503,000 by age 67. $500,000 from one decision to leave something alone. The $34,000 they took home is now a $503,000 hole paid in future dollars that simply will not exist. Most people don't make this decision carelessly. They're in a moment of transition, new city, new job, real expenses, an account from a company that feels like a previous chapter. They're not being reckless. They just didn't know what was actually on the other side of the choice. Roll it over. Always roll it over. The machine only runs on clocks that don't get interrupted. If that one stung, this next one has been running quietly the entire time. You may not have noticed it. Your statement won't show it directly. Number 2. I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, and I'll say up front deliberately, because this is the number most financial content skips, and I genuinely don't understand why. Listen. There is a cost that is legal disclosed and operates without any particular malice, and has been quietly draining a meaningful portion of your compounding machine for years. There's a reasonable chance you agreed to it at a table with a professional who used a lot of charts, and then you didn't think about the number again. It's the annual management fee, the percentage some investment advisors charge on assets under management. A common number is 1%. 1%, a rounding error, the kind of number that doesn't register in daily life. A 1% tip at a restaurant is invisible. A 1% increase on your grocery bill doesn't move the needle. I knew a hospital administrator, 32 years in healthcare, meticulous about everything in her professional life, who paid 1.1% in advisory fees for 26 years without once calculating what that total actually was. She saw net return on her quarterly statements and assumed that was the real number. It was the real number after the fee had already been taken. When someone finally walked her through the full math, she went quiet for about 30 seconds. Then she said, I treated it like a subscription I never thought to cancel. Over 26 years on a portfolio that averaged around $420,000, that 1.1% fee cost her approximately $197,000. That is not an outlier. That is what 1% does over time. Here's the comparison that shows it clearly. 2 investors. Both start with $500,000. Both earn 7% per year from the market identical returns. One pays a 1% annual advisory fee. The other holds a low-cost index fund at 0.04% effectively free. After 30 years, the investor paying 1% ends up with approximately $2,560,000. The investor paying 0.04% ends up with approximately $3,820,000. The difference is $1,260,000, not from smarter picks, not from better timing, not from any decision about the market. Purely from the fee running silently for 30 years, never producing an invoice, always deducted before the return you see on the statement. I'll say what I said about the cash out. There are advisors who earn their fee many times over through tax planning, behavioral coaching, and situations that genuinely need expert guidance. That value is real. But if the primary service is holding a diversified portfolio and rebalancing once a year, which an index fund does automatically for less than $20, then 1% is not a small number. It's the machine running with a slow, quiet hole in the side. Check the fee. Know the number. Know what it costs over 30 years compounded. Then decide whether the service matches the price. This is it. This is the one the title promised. The exact moment compounding becomes a wealth machine. And I kept it for last because everything we've covered, the $100,000 threshold, the year returns, beat your contributions, the invisible decade, the crash, you don't react to the cash out, the fee, all of it was scaffolding. This is the building. The exact moment is not a number on a screen. It is not a balance crossing a milestone. It is not a phone call from an advisor or a certificate from a brokerage. Nobody hands you anything. There's no ceremony. It's something that happens in an ordinary moment, usually when you're not thinking about money at all. You're mowing the lawn on a Saturday afternoon, mind completely elsewhere, and a thought crosses almost without permission. My portfolio probably made more money this year than I did. You're alone on a Sunday evening, house quiet. Nothing on the schedule, the kind of quiet that used to feel like something missing, but now just feels like space, and you open the account almost out of habit. You look at what it earned last year. You look at your W-2, the portfolio won. You're at dinner, and a friend mentions what they made last year, and something in you registers almost without meaning to that your account generated more than that figure without a single hour of your labor, without a meeting, without a deliverable, without anyone's approval. That is the moment, not retirement, not some official declaration of financial independence, a quiet realization in the middle of an ordinary life that the relationship between you and your money has fundamentally changed. You are no longer the engine. You are the caretaker of something that has learned to run on its own. The people who stopped working at 59 or 60, the ones who look unhurried in a way that has nothing to do with luck, they all remember something like this. It didn't make them quit the next morning, but it changed the entire frame of why they were showing up to work. From "I have to" "I'm choosing to for now." That shift is enormous. It changes your relationship with your job, with your spending, with your time in ways that are genuinely difficult to describe from the outside. What I call the crossover from earner to owner is the thing people reach for when someone asks why retirement feels different than they expected. Not just free, different. Like a background hum that had been running so long they'd stopped hearing it. And then one day, in the middle of something ordinary, it stopped. The question that tells you exactly where you stand. If your income disappeared tomorrow, for how long could your portfolio support your actual life? Not perfectly, not forever, for a year, for 3, for 10. That answer tells you where you are in the machine. And if the answer is longer than you expected, you may have already crossed this moment without knowing it. You may be on the other side and still acting like you're not. The biggest misunderstanding about compounding is that it's a math story. The math is real. Every number in this video is real. But the wealth machine it builds is as psychological as it is financial. The exact moment compounding becomes a wealth machine isn't when the balance hits a number. It isn't when an advisor tells you you're ready. It isn't even the day you formally stop working. It's the morning you look at what your money earned last year and realize it outworked you, and you don't feel impressed or surprised or particularly excited, just relieved. Because money stops being something you worry about and starts being something that works for you, and the distance between those two things is not a number. It is a life. So there you have it. The exact moment compounding becomes a wealth machine isn't a moving target or a number that keeps retreating to the next milestone. It's when your money earns more in a year than you do, when you cross from earner to owner, when the machine you spent decades building finally runs faster than you can push it. The 7 things that either move you toward it or quietly delay it. The $100,000 threshold where the engine first turns over. The year your returns outpace your contributions and you stop working retirement alone. The invisible decade in your 40s doing the heaviest lifting while life is loudest. The crash you sit through without reacting because the base is solid enough not to need rescuing. The 401k cash out that felt like a windfall and cost $503,000 in future money. The 1% fee that cost $1,260,000 over 30 years without a single invoice, and the morning the machine quietly outworked you. Not exciting. Nothing on that list is going to trend. But you know what's less interesting than all of it sitting in a performance review at 66, still needing the salary, knowing the math said 59, because the cash out reset the clock in your 30s, the fee ran for 20 years without a bill, and you sold everything in a March that turned out to be the bottom. If this gave you something real, hit the like button. It helps more people find this instead of the version that's easier to make. Subscribe if you want to keep going. More of the real math, the real psychology, the conversations. Most finance content leaves out because they're not exciting enough for a title. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 7 hit closest to home for you. Be specific. I read them all. And I'm guilty of at least 2 of these myself, so this is a genuine no judgment zone. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and maybe open the account tonight. Not to panic, just to check. You might already be on the other side.